All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, good afternoon or good morning. We're going to get started in about 3 to 4 minutes. So just sit tight and we'll wait for more attendees. Thank you. Do you have the PowerPoint? Everything?
Yeah, it's PowerPoint. I have the V7.
Let's get started then. Close the door.
I have no idea.
Michael, do you have Ruby's number? I just locked myself out of that room. I'm so sorry. Oh my god, this is a disaster.
Yeah, I do.
Can you call her? Ask her what the passcode is?
Hey, Ruby. Question. Do you know the code to Charlotte's office? Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. All right. Bye. Do you think this is 2688? If not, call Laura. Cool.
Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So today's webinar is as part of our new Dynamics AX version 7 series, and we are going to be talking about the new projects module in V7 and some of the new functionality around it and what the look and feel of the new cloud version is. My name is Ming, and I will be hosting this webinar. Just some few reminders for everyone. Everyone is currently on mute, and if you have questions throughout our 1-hour session, please type in your questions in the questions pane, and we will make sure that we get to your questions at the end of the session. And then we'll be happy to have, and I'll unmute everyone at that time, and we'll have a great discussion at the end. So let's go ahead and get started with our webinar, the new projects module and utilizing it in the new Dynamics AX. I know a lot of you guys are already customers, but for those who are not, just a little bit about eBECS and what we do. We are a total Microsoft business solution provider, and we deliver those solutions globally through our multiple offices across the world. We are a Microsoft partner, and we kind of specialize in 3 verticals: CRM, ERP, and BI. And we've won Microsoft Dynamics Reseller of the Year for several years now, something that we're very proud of. And we've also been Global Partner of the Year. And we've been in Microsoft's Dynamics Inner Circle for several years as well, which is really, we're very proud of that because it's only bestowed to the top 2% of partners across the world. So without further ado, I'm so happy to introduce Michael Tao, who is an application consultant here at the eBECS North America office in Atlanta. Michael will be giving the webinar, and Michael, the presentation is all yours. Let me go ahead.
All right, thank you, Ming. All right, so as she said, I'm happy to be here today. So specifically, I work in the finance field for Microsoft Dynamics AX. So I specialize in the finance side as well as the costing elements of the setup of AX. And through there, I have experience in TNL and production as well. But I also have worked with project accounting, so I've had experience with projects. And like the webinar suggests, today's kind of give you an idea of how AX7 works with new applications and new changes, and how much also stays the same in 2012. All right, so without further ado, we're going to keep going. All right, so this right here will be our general agenda for the screen. So we'll have our introduction, our overview, project features, demonstration, and then after that, we'll pretty much discuss the upcoming events, any future steps, and then we'll finally have our question and answer time. All right. So project features in Dynamics AX. So there are general basic features for each project that will need to be completed or generally used as you work through projects. So the first one is obviously project creation, and here that's where you'll be working with creating the project itself, defining the customers who are going to fund it, and creating any sort of billing rules or selecting the project type, etc. Next is the work breakdown structure, and this is the hierarchical structure which will allow you to generate all the tasks, estimate the projected expenses, item costs, fees, etc., as well as also assigning resources so that when you're working through the project should be going as listed through the work breakdown structure. Next, we're just going to enter some project transactions to kind of show you how it hits the project itself, and you'll just see the general journal transactions through there. We'll also have item requirement, so any items that we transfer over into our item requirement, you can see how we will deal with that. So the project requires an item, you can purchase item, you can produce an item, you can pull it from inventory, etc. Next we'll have project invoicing. And again, this will depend on the project, but I'll show you an example of a specific version of how a project will be invoiced and how exactly it will hit the customer and react based on the initial project creation steps. And then finally, we'll have our project progress tracking. So AX allows you just a bunch of different tools, including the work breakdown structure, as well as financial reports and forms that will kind of give you an idea of how the project stands going forward. All right, so next, this is the new project management and accounting module. So you see it kind of follows the new change along with Dynamics AX, and they've kind of broken down a lot of the common information and just generally grouped the information into each of the different categories, such as projects, item tasks, etc., which you can see here. So from a user interface standpoint, it's a lot easier to kind of just know what you're looking for, and most of the setups and reports and forms will all be there for you. So in AX7, there's a new workspace, if you notice up top. It's called Project Management. And essentially what it is just kind of a real quick workspace for you to kind of view all the different projects, see the statuses of them, be able to filter in between the project image proposals, project statements, etc. Of course, you can also customize this workspace, and I'm not going to cover that today, but there's also a masterclass session on it that we are hosting in a couple of weeks on the 26th, which will kind of give you an idea of how the general AX7 itself works, as well as navigation, customizations, etc. All right, so the first thing we're going to work on is project creation. So the types of projects from AX7 have not changed much from AX 2012. Again, you have your billable and your non-billable types of projects. Again, the non-billable projects are pretty much internal projects that are either used for research and development or just research tracking itself. So I won't demo that today, but that's the general idea of them. And each of them have its own separate goals for the project use. And then we have our billable project types. Again, the same as 2012, but our fixed price, when you're working with transactions, any expenses occurred against it will just hit it and it'll be accrued separately. The invoicing itself will be based on a fixed price, so it'll be based on the contract value. And all these rules can be modified as such, which I will show you going forward, since our demo today will be working on a fixed price project. And then you also have your time and material, where the difference is all the expenses that you post against the project, that's what you will actually be invoicing for your revenue. All right. And when you're creating a project, a crucial portion is the project contract itself. And essentially the project contract determines who funds it, and from there you can generate and set up a multitude of different billing and invoicing rules and restrictions. So billing rules itself you can set up such that when you have milestones, example, progress, unit delivery, you will update the contract as such based on whatever you set up. So example, today we're going to be working on unit delivery. So if we have 200,000 pounds of material X that we need to ship, as we ship material to them, so to say we have 100,000 pounds, will be updated and it will go forward from there and invoice as such, so that we don't ourselves have to figure out what the actual pricing for the invoice will be. There's also a neat term called customer retention terms on the product contract itself, which if you're working with a customer and they want to hold X% of an invoice until this project is a certain percent complete, it'll set it as such. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we actually start working into our project invoicing. All right. So just to kind of give you a recap of all that, we're going to go ahead and go to a demonstration. So I'm going to jump out of here, and we're going to switch over into AX7. All right, so when we first create a project, we're going to come into our project management and accounting, and we'll just come to all projects. So you have your standard list, and up top is where all the new actions for the project will be. And the portion will show up on the right side, and we're going to first select our fixed price project, since that's what we were working with today. And we will enter our project name. We will select our project group, and this will be done in the setup, which won't be covered today, but the setup for the project group will determine the posting for all your individual expenses and expense transactions, which will translate to costs and revenue transactions. So now you'll see here that we need to select the project contract ID. You can initially create a project contract ID beforehand, or you also have the option to create a project contract ID from this form right here. So we'll hit new and you'll notice a new form shows up. So I'm going to name it the same as our project. We'll have a customer and we'll select our funding source customer, and I already have one, so Contoso Retail San Diego. and we're going to hit OK, and you'll see that it populates into the project contract ID. And if you're creating the project and you're a project manager, you can go ahead and type in the name if you know the project manager, or you can select yourself if you're working on this project. And what it essentially does is when you're working with the navigation pane, there's an option to filter for only your projects, my projects. So when it's right now, since I put it as myself, Michael Tell, when I hit my projects, I should be able to see this in the list filter down. So we see our new project showed up here. And what we're going to actually do first is we're going to jump into our project contract. So our project contract populated with the basic information, but now we're going to go ahead and just change some information around. So all the basically pops in. We'll add a new billing rule, and we're going to work with unit of delivery. And if you notice, when I switch this, you will see that the fields change for population, and this will all be based on the line type you choose for billing rule. So we're going to say we're going to deliver 250 hours of training. So our unit, hour, unit quantity, 250, and let's say the sales price per hour is 150. So now we'll select the project, and now it'll be locked in. And so I'm going to show you the customer retention as we walk through this demo. So we're going to select 10%. So essentially the retention term that we'll be working with will be holding 10% of the invoice until it is 50% complete. So not only will you have added there the billing rules, but you'll also have to come to the funding source itself and add it here in the customer retention form term. We'll add 001, and we select on it, it'll drop you in, and it'll show you that we're going to hold 10% through 50% completion of the project. So when I exit out, we'll have that set, and we're just going to save this. And one final portion is a setup for the retention term. We'll have to add it here as well in the actual project. And this percentage of work completion will update as you update your project contract and go forward. All right, so that's essentially all the basics of how to set up a project. So now we're going to jump back into our presentation. All right, so now we have a work breakdown structure. So essentially, as you see below you on the screen, you're going to see pretty much a hierarchy of lists and tasks. So essentially the tasks will be determined by the main value, so the 1, but you're also allowed to go further. So you'll see the 1.1 and the 1.2 are level 2, and you'll be able to go all the way down to level 9. And essentially as you do it, you'll be able to assign the different categories for the hour types. You'll be able to assign how many effort hours and then the number of resources. So AX employs a smart calculation, so it does an automatic scheduling. So based on between the effort hours, the start duration, and the number of resources, it'll determine the automatic best scheduling. So generally when you put in effort hours, you can put in 8, and you can put in number of resources, and it'll automatically determine the start date to the end date, and it'll determine the duration of days based on that. And you'll also need to set up the scheduling calendar so it knows exactly how to determine the start and end date projections. Once you're done actually completing the work breakdown structure, you'll be able to actually save the template itself so you can use it. Or if you're copying another template from another project, you'll be able to save it from another project and go into the new one. You can import in the work breakdown structure. So it's a neat little structured template. If you have multiple projects that will be following the same guidelines with a few tweaks so that the employee creating this work breakdown structure doesn't have to do the same creation over and over. So within the work breakdown structure, once you publish the form and assign resources to the project itself, you'll be able to actually assign the workers to this project. So it can be hard booked or soft booked, and essentially the difference is soft booking is kind of just a soft reservation, so the worker itself can still be booked for other areas or other projects or within AX. But if you hard book it, then they're pretty much locked in for that duration. You can also filter the resource based on different areas of the skills, education, etc., and that's as you need it. For example, if you have a budget design step and you only want your finance resources to be able to be eligible for booking, you can add a skill, which means skill finance, so all your production guys or your engineers will be locked out of being scheduled for resourcing so that there's no scheduling issues. And also, you can change the sales and cost pricing. So whenever you create a new category for a project, as you see below, the car audio, the project item, they will come in with a default unit cost price and sales price. And you can always go through and change the unit cost price and sales price. When you're creating the work breakdown structure initially, you only add in the hours. But when you come to the estimated cost and revenue screen tab, you can also add in items, expenses, and fees. And again, as the other tab is, this is only available for the lowest level task. And once you're done with all these projections for the hours, items, expenses, fees, all for pricing as well, we can go ahead and transfer them as well. So you can save it all within this work breakdown structure, and it is a one-to-one transfer. So for budgeting purposes, you can bring in all the cost of revenue. For item requirements, you'll bring in all the items so that you know you need to obtain these items for this project to be completed. All right, and again, we're going to jump back out. We're going to come into our demonstration within AX7. So first I'm going to come down and I'm going to go ahead to the project team and scheduling tab. We're going to add our scheduling calendar of production. And production is just a standard 8-hour workday, Monday through Friday. And we're going to go ahead and add a team member so that we can schedule resources. All right, so we just select the role team member. And I'm just going to select myself as the resource, and this is pretty much what will make me responsible for it. All right, so now we drop this in. We should be able to schedule that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now we can add our actual resource. So it will be done with editing. So what we did was added a team member, and now we'll add our resource so that we can schedule Cosmin to our project. And you'll see now that we have our team member and it's edited into Cosmin. So now we're going to come into our plan tab and do our work breakdown structure. So initially you'll see a blank work breakdown structure. When we add new though, you'll be able to see that we have new work breakdown structure ID. And we're just going to say, we're going to add our test step. Again, you can select your category. So let's say apprentice. And let's say this first test step is going to take us 16 hours. So right now you notice that we have one resource, so it's projecting 2 days since we're on an 8-hour workday. But once we change it to 2, it should change to 1 day, and you'll see the end date change as such. So you'll see the varying degree there. If you wanted to add a new one, you can also add a new step. And again, what we were saying in terms of going forward, all you really need to do is indent this. And once you indent, you'll see that the level changes down. And if you notice, the top level now becomes a summary tab instead of a standard just level step. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to give you a full breakdown. All right, so leave the step. Leave step 4. So now we're going to import this. And we have a work breakdown structure set up already. We hit OK. And now you'll see the breakdown of all of our steps. And you notice only the first level is broken down right now. So you can do an expand to. And you can collapse all your levels, expand them all, or select a certain level. So we're just going to do expand all so that you guys can see exactly the full step of it. And again, notice that the one steps, the highest level, the highest to the second lowest level are all summary steps, and the lowest level will have your actual information. All right, so once that's done, we're also going to go ahead and start adding extra expenses and fees to them. Expanding all. All right, so we're going to say on the first step, we're going to add a new expense. So we'll say travel, and we're going to go ahead and put in, let's say it's going to be reimbursed, so $500. So to us it won't cost anything, but it'll still cost the client $500. We'll select new. Let's add a new item. So we'll have a project item, we'll have one, and in order to add the item, we're going to scroll way to the right, select our item number, and we'll add, let's say, HDMI cables. And you'll see that the sales price and cost price popped in automatically. Right now there's no cost price, but let's say there actually is a $10, and this is way too high for HDMI cables. So we're going to change this to, say, $40, higher end HDMI cables. And finally, let's just add one more. So we're just going to add a fee as well, just to kind of show you guys all the different defaults. Again, based on each category on the transaction types, they will automatically default in, so you can change these as necessary. And these will all adjust the total cost price and sales price on the projection. So we're going to save this. I'm going to come to our schedule planning tab, and now we're going to schedule our resources. All right, so right now it seems we have an error. I'm going to fix all the scheduling errors, and that generally means this column right here will be a scheduling error. And on this auto scheduling tab, you can turn off auto scheduling, or you can go ahead and hide any errors. But normally when there are errors, you can go ahead and fix all scheduling, and it'll go through and push all the dates out so that it fixes it correctly. Or you can select individual tasks and fix them as well. So we're going to go ahead and publish this. So the WBS must be published in order for you to assign a resource. So we're going to come scroll over. Editing first to add a team member. Now let's publish this. All right, well, this is currently bugging right now. So the functionality doesn't seem to want to work, but essentially once you add this team member role, you should be able to select on the resource. And so we added Kaufman earlier. So what it should have done is it should have gave you a drop down to allow you to select your resource, and from there you can select the actual soft or hard booking. So sorry about that. If you guys actually have any questions about that, once I figure out why it isn't working right now, I'd be happy to go over it with you one-on-one if need be. But this would be how you would add the resource to the project. But for the sake of time, I'm not gonna go through and try to troubleshoot it. And essentially, once this is done, we can go ahead and close our work breakdown structure. And you'll see our forecast here. So right now we currently have no forecast, so we're not projecting anything. So now we're going to go ahead and maintain it. So literally we're going to hit transfer from WBS. And then you'll notice that we have all our different hours, items, expenses, and fees. And this will all carry down. So we're going to hit OK. All right, and then we got the notification. And we come here, you'll see that all our forecasts have been transferred in. So that's how you would do that. All right, so now that we've gone through the work breakdown structure, kind of adding steps, showing how you can assign resources and change the cost and sales prices, and also transfer to our forecast as well, we can go back to our demonstration. One final point, we're not demoing budgeting today, but you can also, when you're doing project budgeting, you can also transfer from forecast as well. So all these projected expenses, all these, cost and sales prices will be generated for your costs and your revenues for your project budget if you're using budget control. So we're going to jump back into AX7, the presentation. And now we'll just cover project transactions. So the 4 project transactions we talked about will be the same as 2012, and all of these are based on actually inputting it into journals, or if you're working with time registration, since some customers we've worked with in the past do use time registration, but workers, when they do use time registration, it will automatically create hour journals as well. So you can have it set up that way as well so that each employee or customer doesn't have to manually add in the hour or the project manager. Essentially, these will all affect the project differently, and this is all dependent on how you set up the project group, the posting type, whether or not it's going to hit the balance account, the balance sheet accounts, or the profit and loss accounts. And invoicing, again, like I was mentioned, will be different depending on fixed price versus time and material. And there's also a summary screen where you can see all your different project transactions. And it gives you an ability, if you notice the action pane, this image, it kind of gives you an ability to either create a new invoice proposals from those items or the transactions. You can also just view information on it, voucher, transaction details, or you can also post costs and accrue revenue. So this kind of gives you a summary screen and gives you a chance to do whatever you want with the transactions. All right, so now I'm just going to jump back in. And I will go ahead and show you how we're going to add something to a journal. So we're going to come to our project and we'll hit hours. And I'm only going to demo this for the purpose of time, but essentially you'll be adding it, and each full journal will be customized. It will look different. There will be different options for you to fill in depending on the different transaction type. So we're going to hit new. We're going to say our activity number. Let's say we're doing it for the sales. And based on your employee responsible, you can have it automatically populated, which happened here for me. And we're just going to say we did a full week, so 40 hours. Let's do week 1, and we worked all 40 hours. So week 40, and based on this activity number, all the information for your cost price and your sales price will automatically populate in. So all we have to do is post this. Okay here to confirm. All right, now it's been posted. So I'm just going to close out of this journal. And I'm going to come to Project Manager and Accounting. And what we can do is we can do my posted project transactions since I posted it, or all, either or works. And we're just going to change the date to newest. Never mind, let's change this. Maybe this will affect it. All right, so now we see the transaction that appeared here. So you'll see the project and the relevant information. And again, if you want to see the relevant information, so for right now we did view voucher, so you'll see how it hit the accounts, the general ledger accounts, debiting our 500 account and crediting our 600 account. So debiting cost of goods and crediting payroll. You can also choose to post or accrue if you're working with time and material. And you can also just go ahead and invoice this as well with time and material if you wanted to just select all the transactions here. And essentially that's how you can view your transactions and post them against the project. So if these are all against the project that I was just working in, you would see all of this as well. And you can also just filter this out. So let's say I'm going to just select my project. So we'll now just do project and we'll select project ID. And we'll see that it's come down to the one project transaction that I posted. So now we're going to jump back into the presentation. And we're going to next discuss item requirements. So whenever an item is reserved in a project, against that customer, it'll be create a sales order, and all the individual lines can be processed separately. So if you see below, within this one example, we have the two requirements for an HDMI 6-foot and an HDMI 12-foot. So it's processed within the sales order, but this also gives you the option to choose a way to deal with it. So one, if we have an inventory already, we can go through and just pick it from there. If we don't, and we need to produce it, say it's a finished good or such, we can do that as well. Or if we need to buy or purchase it from a vendor, we can also do that. I think. Oh, all right, it is just the one slide then. All right, so now we're just going to go to a demonstration. We're going to come back to our projects. So I'm going to choose my projects, and again, you can see the projects assigned to me that I'm working on. So it's an easier selections filter screen. So there's a bug at times where it doesn't necessarily show the item requirements. So I'm just going to try transferring this again, and hopefully it'll actually pick it up. Alright, I forgot one thing. Sorry about that. Within the work diagram structure, I forgot to assign the product dimensions. So we need to add the site and the warehouse. We'll go and close that, and we're just going to change the pricing again. Since we chose this default site warehouse, we're going to edit this so it matches what we had earlier. Alright, so now when I come back to my project, I should be able to transfer this over. And so it should have popped up here, but since it didn't, we're going to try refreshing it and hopefully that fixes it. If not, there's also an item requirement screen itself, and there is, but I'm just going to show you the option. In project management and accounting, you can also do item task item requirements, and like all the project transactions, every item requirement is listed here. So I'll select item requirements. Well, let's find out what happened to this. It didn't show, so maybe it's showing and not doing that. So let me look for it in the all screen. Alright, so here it is. So it did show up here. So again, there is a bug with the item requirement screen itself, but you can always find them here. So when we're working with this, you can pretty much view the inventory. So we need HDMI cables, and we know that we don't produce them, so maybe we have it on hand. So we'll hit inventory, on hand, and you'll see that we do have it on hand. We'll have a total of 985. So when you see it that's on hand, you have the option to just go ahead and generate the picking list, and then you can pick it and pack it. If not, you also have the option to create a purchase order for it. So we're just going to go ahead, for the purposes of time, we're going to just pick it from inventory. But when you create a purchase order, the same as purchasing any other item, the only difference is it'll show that it's referencing from this project itself. And the same with production orders. All right. And we'll scroll over real quick just to notice the line status. So it's open order right now, but once we're done with it, it should change to invoiced. So we're going to go and manage, and now we're just going to go ahead and do a pick list registration. And do this. And we're going to go ahead and just do update all to show that we picked it from our warehouse. We'll save this, close it. And again, now we'll pack our packing slip. And we'll just post this to show that we're pretty much have consumed the item for a project. All right, and now you'll notice since we now have consumed it, it's been invoiced. And we hit our inquiry sales orders for this item. It should pop up with a sales order, and it should show that it has been invoiced since we've already posted it. And again, this was what I was saying earlier about how the more item requirements you have, it'll pop up here. It'll be going directly to Contoso Retail San Diego or the customer that you choose. So that's the general item requirements. So that's pretty much means you use the item in the project, and if you have more item requirements, you can continue doing the same, producing, purchasing, or picking from inventory. So, and again, here's just a better list. So all the different details, functionalities you can do with the posting, the different functions, what you can look at in terms of inquiries and inventory itself that you can look into. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and jump into project invoicing. So there's generally, when you're working a fixed price, you're going to be updating the billing rule from the project contract first. So right now we're working with 250 hours, so we have to update it with the current amount of hours we worked, which we will do with the 40. And essentially what it'll do is it'll invoice an amount in an on-account transaction when it's released. So it'll be the 40 hours times the, I believe we put in 150 amount, and so that's what we should be able to invoice. So when we come into our invoice proposal, if there are multiple on-account transactions, or if you're working with time and material, a bunch of different transactions, there you can select exactly what you want to invoice and leave out what you don't want to. And if it's determined by a billing rule, there will be an amount determined by it or left out. For example, our customer retention term, since we're under 50% of the project, 10% should be withheld from the amount we're about to invoice. And then finally, once you're done with creating the invoice proposal, you'll see the invoice itself, and again, it's just a summary of what you're about to bill out. And essentially, when you post it, it will hit the customer account. And this is just kind of a demo of the screens that we're going to be working through real quick. So creating the invoice proposal, to viewing the invoice proposal, and we're just going to be posting it, and that will lock it in for the customer. All right, so let's jump out back into AX. All right, so I'm going to select my project. You can also work with the project simply by selecting on the project. So I'm going to just go ahead and open up the project contract ID. And in order to update the contract status, we're going to come to our Maintain tab, and we'll hit Manage Contract Status. And you'll see our billing rule that exists here currently, and you'll see the detail of the current value, how much you've invoiced, any retained payments that the customer's holding, and the percentage completion in the remaining amounts. So you'll see that different information will pop up. So units delivered is available for us since that's our billing type. So let's put in 40 hours. All right, so that should allow us to actually invoice this. So I'm going to close out this. So you can either invoice directly from the billing contract itself in the Maintain by adding a new invoice proposal. You can also open up the project, come to the Manage tab, and hit New Invoice Proposal as well. And so you'll notice that instead of the full $37,500, we have the $6,000, which is the amount of what we had. And if there are more, you can select them as well. And if they're actual project transactions, you can select them here. But since we did a billing rule, it's up here in this first tab. I'm going to hit OK. We'll come down and we'll see the amount, the summary of the on-account transactions, and it was time and material. You have the 4 different types. You'll see tabs for each individual item with a breakdown of each. So we'll come here and we'll see that we're doing the name is 250 hours of training, the rule, our invoice amount, but we'll see we have a retention percentage, and then we see how much the customer is retaining, and we'll see our invoice line amount for 5,400. So that's what we will actually be invoicing. So we can go ahead and post that. And again, just to view exactly all the information, you can scroll around and view that as well. And we're just going to hit OK. All right, so now it's posted. I'm going to close out this. And we hit our invoice journals. Again, you'll see our invoice transaction. We can also view our voucher. And you'll see that the $6,000 was credited to our revenue on account. And we debited the $5,400 to our AR, and since the customer retained $600, we debited that to our payment retention account. So you'll see that there as well. So we close out of here. You should also be able to see this request retained amount form. So if you just select it on this, you'll see as well that you can request the amount here, creating invoice proposal, and you'll see this retained amount. So once you reach the threshold where they're okay with it, you can go ahead and select all the retained amount for every invoice up to that percentage and create an invoice from there as well. All right, so there's that. And the final feature, well, this is going to go into progress tracking, and this won't take too long. So we can track it from our work breakdown structure. So you'll see two different screenshots. The first one is our cost tracking. So the cost tracking, essentially, you'll be able to see everything from the cost standpoint. So the budgeted amount in the WBS versus how much you actually used, and then the cost percentage and cost and completion, all this information will vary as such. And then our effort tracking, you'll do the same, except it will be based off of the total effort hours instead of the cost. So you can kind of get a cost versus hour comparison as well. In addition to that, we have other reports. I guess since they're in the project itself, they're kind of just like forms. And you kind of do quick calculations based on the date or any transaction type you want. So you can run it and you'll be able to see different information. For example, the project statement. You'll see the revenue, you'll see the value added, the information we put here with different tabs to kind of keep going through it. And then our other one, we have our invoice control, and you kind of see exactly what was invoiced against what item type going forward. So I'm going to show you that real quick. Then come to our work breakdown structure. So we hit our tracking views. And again, we're just going to go ahead and expand everything. All right, and if you notice, the only one we did was the original revenue account. So this is pretty much showing you the information of what we've done. So the remaining cost of $519.55, cost of completion $510, is saying that we've cost 45 cents so far. I'm not sure what the calculation on that one was, but assuming that it all configures correctly, that value should be correct, but it also will give you a total cost percentage based on what you've done, based on your setup down here, and it'll summarize up top. And again, we can also switch to our effort tracking, and you'll see the number of hours. I understand, we put it to just the sales activity, not the cost, not the original revenue account. So that's where that will sit there. I'm going to jump out, come to our control tab, and this will kind of give you everything. So you can use your tracking views, and again, it will bring you all to here, the work breakdown structure. You can also use utilization hour calculations, and you can see the different information here. But you also have your statements, so your project statements. So right now you have no information. You have your filtering. So right now we're just filtering for everything. So we'll use today's date. Hit calculate. And you'll see our revenue. And you'll see our value added, our cost per hours, our gross margin. And we can switch to our profit and loss, kind of see where it's hitting our accounts, our WIP, etc. So these are all project statements you can use to pretty much track your project, kind of control the flow of the project, and see information as such. All right, so that's the end of our walkthrough of the project, and that kind of gave you an idea of how we created a project for our 250 hours. We created the billing rule and the retaining amount for the customer. We picked an inventory item for our project so that we can work on the project itself, and then we finally did an invoice on top of our research scheduling on other setups. So we have other upcoming events, and it's all listed here. I guess our biggest one that's not so much a webinar, but it's kind of a master class itself. If you notice, the third one is our fourth one, our master class, the new Microsoft Dynamics AX7. And I referenced that earlier, and this kind of just gives you an intro to all the knickknacks and nooks and crannies of AX7. So kind of how to navigate it, how to customize it, personalize screens, and just do the general basic walkthrough of all the separate tasks in AX. Going forward, we also have some next steps, and kind of just gives you an idea of what you want to achieve. So eBECS offers a variety of different options that we can use. For example, the master class we were talking about. We also have the capability of upgrading your proof of concept assessments and determining whether or not you guys are capable of switching to the cloud-based system, which is what AX7 is currently running on. If needed, we also have an AX upgrade assessment, and it's essentially a 2-day on-site session where we have a team of experts come in, and we kind of pretty much reevaluate your situation, kind of go through your AX setup and your on-premise materials, and determine your investment returns on upgrading to the cloud. And I guess with that, we'll take it to questions and answers. I believe we have about 2 minutes, so we may not get to everything.
All right, we've got a few questions from Jamie. So question number 1 is to you, Michael, is are multiple funding sources possible for one project?
Yes. So I assume you're talking about multiple customers. So say you're working on a project for 100,000 and you had 3 customers, one doing 20 for customer A, 30 for customer B, and then for 50 for customer C. You can do that as well. So we jump into the project contract. You'll see that we have one current customer, but we can also add a separate customer as well. So we can add our different customers. So we added a second one. We can do that as well. We can also come to our funding limits. And you can also mess around with the total amount. So this is US-01. Sorry, I have to set that up separately. But essentially, what we'll do here is once you add the separate ones, you can set it up in this amount versus how much committed for each different customer. So that will allow you to, like you said, use your multiple funding sources.
All right, and our second question is, can standard unit costs, labor, for example, be rigidly defined for budget construction?
Yes. So standard labor costs. So as I was talking about the project categories for each of the separate, I guess, labor hour types. So we're going to come to our setup, and we'll go into our categories. And come to our project categories real quick. So you'll see, for example, we have our apprentice. Our apprentice is an hour type. You'll see that here. So you'll see that you can set up the cost price for it as well. So right now it's currently at a cost price of $10, and this is for pretty much all projects. But you can rigorously change this here so that you can select different rates and setups. Let me see if I can find a better way to work into that. I might not be able to find one. Yeah, so we can choose effective dates, so we can also change the dates. You can also, when you add roles for employees, you can also change it per role. We're going to choose our apprentice. You can change it per resource as you want as well. So you can make it valid for a specific project, or you can just do an overarching amount for everything, or you can select a specific project group. And we come down, you'll see our currency, and we'll be able to just pretty much type it in. So we're going to say $50 is a standard cost price, sales price. And so this, because all projects, we can have it set up as such. And from this screen as well, you can go ahead and you can break down by project group and by individual project, as well as selecting your resource or roles. Additionally, if you have that set up but on a specific project is going to be different from everything that you're normally using, you can change that from the project screen as well. So we come to our project. I'm going to open this. We'll come to our project, and you'll see our setup here, and we'll also have a cost price and a sales price. So for hours, we can also come in here, and since we have no specific changes, we're able to select this here. We'll just make this a blanket for this project, for everything using the car audio hour type. We can change this to make it $40. So let's say the standard default was $20. You can go ahead and change that. So this will show up in the project category transaction screen as its own standalone cost price as well. So you can do this and modify this as such so that when you're entering in your work breakdown structure and using that category across multiple steps, you don't have to go back and constantly be changing the amount because it varies from your main setup. You can change it specifically for this project from this project.
Great. And then the next question is, can resources be assigned as a generic role if the specific individual cannot be identified? I think we've already answered that question really, but the answer is yes. Right, Michael?
Yes. So yeah, you can generally just put the resource in, and kind of go from there.
Okay, and then we've got one question left, and it's from Roger, and Roger asks, are there any changes to the budgeting part of the project? And just so everyone knows, at the end of Roger's question, I'm going to unmute everyone, and then if you have any specific questions that you have right now to ask Michael, feel free to speak up. Okay.
Okay. So if you're talking about an upgrade from 2012 itself, there is no change for the budgeting portion. From most of the finance side and the project accounting side as well, when they upgraded project budgeting, a lot of stuff hasn't changed since they were focusing more on the other operational side of things when they were upgrading to AX7. So there will be changes coming forward, but as of right now, the specific project budgeting module, if you used it in 2012, remains the same. Obviously, some of the navigation will change slightly, but the functionality itself is the same.
Okay, I'm going to start unmuting people, and if you have any questions, please ask. Okay. If there aren't any questions from anyone, then Michael, you can move forward to your last slide. Michael?
All right. So again, thank you pretty much for coming to this session. Hopefully this kind of gave you an insight into the changes. Again, the biggest changes came from resource scheduling, and it was just booking resources separately. A lot of it will just be navigational changes, but there will be changes going forward with the cumulative updates as they come out towards projects as well. They just weren't addressed in the initial release. So if you have any other questions or any specific questions or want to work through examples or anything like that, feel free to contact myself, and I will be happy to walk you through them, or also Charlotte as well at the email addresses below. And again, if you want more information on eBECS itself, feel free to visit www.ebecs.com. And for a full list of our events and how to sign up, again, same URL except adding events to it as well.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for attending. Have a wonderful afternoon. I hope you got something out of this webinar.
Have a good day.